So thanks, Claire, Kate and Tony, for joining us on the podcast this afternoon. And I'm so pleased that you're wanting to share what your improvement journey really with folk across the country, because to be honest, you've come a long way in a relatively short space of time. So with that, Claire, can you give us a little bit of an overview to where you were to where you are now, reference your ambulance handover delays, please?
Yeah, of course. Good morning. My name is Claire Hanford. I'm the Deputy Divisional Director for Urgent Care here at Kettering General Hospital. So looking over the last kind of 12 months with our ambulance handover delays, Kettering was experiencing a high volume of delays, especially from the past 12 to 18 months. We were looking at probably about 250, 260 a month in the last December, January time, looking in 2020. The Trust has obviously has a zero tolerance to black breaches, which is those patients that are delayed for more than 60 minutes. We are now looking at the past couple of months having no black breaches, so no delays for those patients for the last couple of months. So we've gone from probably breaching around about just under 10% of our patients to literally probably about 0.5% of our patients at the moment. So with the support from the Trust, the support from the departments and support from the ED, we've come an awful long way into reducing our breaches.
Excellent, excellent. So the key question, what have you done differently? How have you managed to smash it?
So I'm going to let Tony to detail the exactly what we've done, but I have to say that the biggest thing for me has been the teamwork that we've had. We've had an awful lot of support externally, especially with EMAS. They've come on board with us as well, and we've brought the team along with us. So it's been a massive journey for everybody here, from the exec teams down to us. Obviously, Kate's here from the site team, but ED itself and the nurses, the HCAs, all the staff have been on board with supporting us to make the patient's journey a lot more smoother.
Super. Over to you then, Tony. You have the floor.
Exciting. Hi, I'm Tony Platts. I'm matron for ED here at Kettering, and I've been the lead for the internal work stream for our ambulance handover, ambulance conveyance process. And I actually only came into this post just as this improvement plan was looked at, and I was actually sort of voluntold before I'd even come into post that this is what I would be doing. So it was quite daunting actually, but quite a good opportunity to sort of get established in the team and run with it, have a fresh set of eyes on things. So do you want me to just talk through sort of a brief summary of our journey, Jenny? Would that be helpful?
Super, thank you.
So we quickly established our work streams and our teams, and actually had really good engagement right from the very start with the fact that it didn't all just sit in ED. So we split into internal and external work streams, and I think predominantly we'll talk about our internal work streams, but we can touch on some of our other work as well, and made it very clear right from the start what our overall aim was. And ours was quite simple, really. So after much resistance, because found it really difficult to sort of reduce that down. Kate's laughing because she was quite instrumental in making sure we were very clear. And we simply had it that we would have all of our handovers, ambulance handovers, performed within 15 minutes. So we haven't got there yet, but you know, the road is long, but the consequences of that have been what Claire's explained. So basically we started off by reviewing what existing processes we had in place. I felt that the department was already pretty efficient because everyone always seemed incredibly busy. We're working really hard, and it didn't feel that there was anything internally and in the department that we would actually be able to maximise. And no, wasn't the case at all. When we actually stood back and took some time, so myself and Martin Claydon from the EMAS came and did some observational work, and actually it was quite obvious what our blocks were when we stood back and had a look at what was making these delays. So actually we managed to sort of map out and have really quite early on what we would consider some quite quick wins. So they were things like not always having enough trolleys. So when patients were taken and transferred to the ward. We were sometimes then waiting for that trolley to actually come back before we could physically offload the next crew. So all of these things were, you know, relatively obvious when you had a look at it, but actually because we've been accepting this for some time, it wasn't apparent until we actually looked. And there were other little things like swipe access for crews. We actually were, whilst we'd improved our security in the department, we'd forgotten that we perhaps needed to let them out and that they needed to come in. So there was a little piece of work done around the fact that we actually needed to give them free access into the department as well. So yeah, so there's lots and lots of work done at that initial stage about actually what isn't working particularly well, and that pretty much told us what we needed to do. And that meant that really early on we were able to engage additional support within the department. So our service manager had lots to do about putting in a statement of needs, getting computer screens up. So it was great because there was lots of support in the department to get this working. And then we also noticed that we had to make it very, very clear that if we were looking at our processes within the department, we needed to look at our processes to remove some blocks. So we looked at our escalation process. So if we knew we were going to be running into problems with offloading our crews, we needed to make it really, really clear to the team what their next actions were. So we love using the word escalation in the department, but we weren't very clear about what that escalation actually meant. So when you're saying I've escalated it to clinical ops, for example, or site, what are you actually asking somebody to do in order to solve your problems? We did lots of work around that, and Kate was really heavily involved in that, and that's become really, really embedded. So our language is shared, what our expectations are is shared, and that has gone all the way up to the senior managers on call. When they're on call, they use that information. The director on call is very aware of what the expectations are, and actually that's helped with that shared responsibility. So it doesn't feel like it's a problem that sits in ED, it feels like it's a problem now that's owned by the trust. So that's been a massive piece of work. We also established sort of action cards and did quite a lot of focus work on the ambulance streaming role, which was a new role established because of COVID initially, but actually we sort of ran with it a little bit. So this role that we kind of half made up, we've actually made into quite an instrumental part of the department's running. And even down to the fact that we talked to ambulance crews and they weren't always clear who that member of staff was. So they've got like a nice little badge now that makes it very clear. They love wearing it. But actually it makes it really, really clear when you walk into ambulance streaming who the person is that's going to nav you. And the fact that we've done an awful lot of work on preemptive arrivals. So we have our ambulance screens up, we have them up in every area now, so nobody can say, oh, I didn't realise 6 crews had just arrived at once, because it's right there. And we've did a lot of work around the fact that we know these patients are coming, that's the point where we need to start planning, not when patients arrive. So there's that, and again that's something that's really well established now. So if I think actually if you took those screens down, bearing in mind there was a bit of resistance, I think if you took them down now, I think people would feel they were flying blind. So I think that's been a really positive. We had really good engagement from our admin staff, so our reception booking in staff. We noticed that there was a bit of a delay in crews being able to book in patients, all that information being readily available, and that's really, really slick now. And we've had quite a lot of new staff start, and it was really, really good to hear that. I was listening to their induction the other day, and that was very, very clear that, you know, you might be new here, but you're not going to let the slide down. So that was embedded right from the start. So we talked about our engagement with EMAS, and that's been ongoing all the way through. They've been brilliant, and actually when I talk about next steps, that it's very, very clear that anything we're doing going forward is that partnership sort of, I don't think Martin's going to get free from us at the moment, so we're having in quite regular communication there, and that's really, really good. And we've cascaded that down, so actually we've made a point of contact for our band 7s so that they've got direct access to I can't think what they're called, the DOMs, so that they've got direct access and they can start building up their own relationships as well. I think that's really important going forward. What else have I said? I said about the service managers. Said about so then what we were finding, so things were going at this point pretty well, and then we were finding we were having little cluster breakouts of black breaches. So they weren't scattered across the week. It was often when they were all sort of focused on one particular shift or one particular period of time. And what became clear to us all is that we didn't always have the information around those breaches that we needed in order to be able to dissect them and work out what we'd do going forward. So what hadn't worked on that particular day. So we developed a handover delay action card, which we use now to feed into our flash report. And that's filled out by that clinical nav role. So as soon as they think they can't place an ambulance, they have to start documenting what's been going on. So what action's been taken, what answers did you get, what were your problems, so that when you then come to have to report, actually you've got all of that information together. And that's been really useful in being able to work out what's gone wrong and perhaps sort those things out. But yeah, so as we've just said, we've just come through a really busy winter, like everybody has. So like everywhere else, we had massive staff shortages across the trust. We had high acuity, so our red AGP patients were sort of through the roof. This resulted in longer lengths of stay, reduced beds, reduced flow, and everyone was pretty tired as well. I think that had a massive impact, but we've held the line throughout, and I think that's what we're really proud of, is the fact that we didn't revert back to old systems. We didn't revert back to what we knew. We stuck with keeping this pressure on ourselves, because we realised, I think, after a little bit of initial, oh yeah, this is someone else's target, people could see the benefits to our patients and our department, and it soon became a big part of how you manage that shift was about getting these patients offloaded safely and quickly. So yeah, so very proud of everybody involved. Do you want me to stop talking now? I'm excited.
To be fair, I have to say, Tony, your story is absolutely contagious, because it's just such a richness of how you normalise processes in a department, and by default, I think we always feel that we're doing what is right and what is best. And when you take that step back and you look at it objectively, and you see things differently, absolutely. And I think the ownership of the problem across the organisation is really powerful, and the expectations of your new staff coming in. This is our vision. This is our culture. This is what we do. And even the standardisation of the escalation, the terminology you're using, so everybody's got that generic language that they're using. So I bet it's not been without its challenges. And by the smiles, I take it it's not. So what's been some of the challenges, and what did you learn from them, and how did you overcome them?
Kate, do you want to take the floor?
Well, I was just going to skip that question a little bit. But I was just going to, because I just wanted to add, so as Tony said, we split it into what is internal and what is external, and looked at it as two approaches. So Tony, as she described, has done fantastic, loads of work internally, but we acknowledged that equally we needed to look externally as well. And so actually making sure that those patients rocking up in an ambulance outside ED actually were appropriate to be there and were being conveyed. And so we had great engagement through this project through with our EMAS ambulance colleagues and also our mental health service providers. So that was one of a big areas for us in making sure that those patients were the right patients coming. So we looked at different ways to ensure that we are getting the right patients in the right place at the right time. And so with EMAS, we looked at the criteria for how they identify patients to go to our urgent care area, which is a separate area for our trust in a different adjacent town, not too far away, stone's throw away, but it is a different town, and it's not owned by our trust, but it is another urgent care area who were calling out for work, really, and they were really engaged with us. They were part of this project as well, in working with us, and how they could assist us more by taking on more work that they were capable of. So we looked at the criteria for that. We made sure that all the ambulance crews were really cited on it, and they were signed up to it, and they were familiar with it. And then we looked at how could we stretch it. And so one of the things we looked at is the postcode, because the locality of this area compared to the ED is a real factor in attendances. So we brought in consideration of the postcode that the ambulance crew were in. So when they're in that postcode, they use that as a criteria for taking to an urgent care area, as well as then the clinical aspects, so the patient's still going clinically to the right area. And when we brought in that criteria of that postcode, we saw that we started to actually convey more people to the urgent care area, and we were able, through the use of our lovely SPC charts, which I'm a little bit of a fan of, training everybody in, we were able to see a significant statistical change from doing that. So once we saw that we were improving on that, we thought, well, can we stretch it a bit more? And we extended the postcode a little bit more. Didn't see quite an impact from that, but we knew that what we had done, we would keep at it, and so that became part of the standard criteria that the EMAS used. Also, our mental health service colleagues, who again from another trust, they implemented open access to the ambulance crew to their 24-hour mental health hub, as so they could directly take patients there. And when we put all that data together to look at the conveyances from when they did that, again we saw how much of an improvement through SPC that was making and continued to make. But what we then looked at is actually we were doing case reviews. So those patients that were still coming through with those changes made, who we felt could have been managed in other places, we were doing a case review of that and identifying, yes, we could have done this and we could have done that, and they could have gone somewhere else. But we found when we were tracking what we were doing and measuring the improvement from it, we weren't making an improvement from that. So it made us stop and think, well, what is the purpose in what we're doing? We're not making an improvement. So what is it? Why aren't we making an improvement? And what should we do differently? And what we felt is where we were doing that was far too high level. It was EMAS sort of management. It was myself at ED, Tony, and we and a senior director at the mental health services. But we were too high. We weren't effectively filtering that learning back down to the grassroots. So we have taken a different approach, and we are now pulling a selection of patients, and we're then handing those case studies back to the groups on the floor who are doing that review to identify what could we have done differently and what do we need to do to avoid this in the future, and giving that back to them to start, for them to identify where they could have done things differently and why didn't it work quite so well in that respect. So that's where we're at now with that, in regards to how we're focused that we could still make improvements, and actually by tracking what we're doing and whether we are making improvement, it's making us stop and think, let's do something slightly different. What's wrong with this if we're not making an improvement? So that has incorporated a little bit of a challenge. So a little bit answered your question.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks. So next steps, what's next?
Well, we're having a complete review is what our next steps are. So because our original aim was that all patients would be handed over within 15 minutes. And so, yes, we've made massive improvements. We've changed, we've done loads of things, but actually we're not there. So we're not finished, Jenny. I'm not leaving it. So we had a Band 7 meeting on Friday, and actually they proposed what they see as needing to happen in the department in order to achieve this target. They're not happy either with the fact, so this is you know, potentially a group in the department that were a little bit change weary, a little bit feeling a little bit disaffected by everything that had been going on, have actually turned around and said, oh, hang on a minute, this is what we want to do. So for me, that's amazing, because it's no longer they've taken it. They're the guys that are running the department day to day. So they've actually come up with 2 options of how they think that they can improve ambulance handover times. They're the ones that have decided what KPIs they want to use in order to prove that one system's better than the other. And it was just really great to see everyone starting to talk in the same language. So they're starting to, you know, have a real understanding of what our standards are, what our performance indicators are, and it was really, really good. So yeah, so we've got option A and option B. So I suppose it's a little bit of a watch this space, really, because I don't think that with any improvement drive that you do, you've ever really cracked it, because something will always come along and change. And I think that's, we also keep signing ourselves up to things as well. So I think as a department, we've got the transformation innovation bug. So we know that there's a lot that we want to do, and so we're off the back of this. So we're not, you know, this has still got a lot of playing out to do, but we're also really looking at what we're going to do next. So we've already signed ourselves up for the CLEAR programme, and got selected as one of the trusts to do that, and we're trying as much as we can to sort of join up with going and having a look at other trusts that are doing really well in particular areas, to join networks, look at what other assistance is out and available. And I think that that's quite exciting, really. So we're not resting on our laurels. We've got a new urgent care hub to move into in 3 years' time, and we want to move practice that's working well and our systems that are working well into that new hub, rather than trying to work out how it works when we get there. So
brilliant. Well, Kate, Tony, Claire, thank you so much for your time. I think the content of what we spoke about, folk will find absolutely invaluable. The transformation, innovation, improvement bug, I think, should be contagious. And just thank you for your time. And I really do look forward to seeing where you are in 12 months' time. Well, in 6 months' time, because I don't think you're going to be in the same place. Probably in 2 months' time, never mind 6 months' time, never mind 12 months. So huge congratulations in everything you've done. And it really does benefit our patients and our staff. So thank you so much for your time today.
thanks for
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.